Hello students, today I am going to explain you about interior of the earth. Last week I explained you about introduction. Now I am going to explain you two topics, meaning of crust, mantle and core. Second is extent and composition of these layers. Let's start with the layers of the earth. As we know, there are three layers of the earth: crust, mantle and core. These three concentric layers are divided on the basis of earthquake waves. What is earthquake waves? Waves generate at the time of earthquake. These are also called seismic waves. That is primary waves, secondary waves and surface waves. So if we discuss about these three waves, so the velocity or speed of these three waves will be different in different layers. Next is varying density. Varying means a different density. If we'll compare the outer layer, crust, mantle and core, the density of each layer will be different. Like outer crust, that is less dense comparatively to the mantle and core. And the next is physical and chemical properties of rocks. So on the basis of earthquake waves, different density, physical and chemical properties of rocks, on the basis of these three, we divide earth in three different layers: the crust, the mantle and the core. Now the very first layer, which is also called outermost layer of the earth, is called crust. If we'll compare crust, mantle, core, crust is the thinnest layer which comprises with rocks and soil. The average thickness of this layer is about 60 kilometers. This layer is the solid layer of the earth. Average density of the crust is less than 3 grams per cubic centimeter. The chemical composition of crust is different as compared to mantle and core. Crust is made up of silica, aluminium and magnesium. Crust is divided in two parts: continental crust and oceanic crust. You should know continental crust is also known as outer crust. Oceanic crust is also known as inner crust. So there are 7 continents comprises with continental crust, and there are 5 oceans, especially the ocean floor, that comprises with oceanic crust. Now let's learn the differences between continental and oceanic crust. Continental crust, which is also known as outer crust; oceanic crust, which is also known as inner crust. Continental crust is made up of silica and aluminium, and these are very light. If we'll see, oceanic crust is made up of silica and magnesium. So this is also called sema. So this is the first difference. Continental crust is also called outer crust. Oceanic crust is also called inner crust. It is made up of silica and aluminium, which is also known as Sial. Oceanic crust is also called inner crust, which is made up of silica and magnesium, which is also known as Sema. Continental crust is very lighter. So the average density of this layer is 2.5 grams per cubic centimeter. And oceanic crust is denser than continental crust. The average density of this layer is 3.0 grams per cubic centimeter. Now, learn one thing: why oceanic crust is denser than continental crust? Because continental crust is made up of lighter material, silica and aluminium. Yes, silica is common in both, but if we'll compare aluminium and magnesium, aluminium is very lighter than magnesium. And the second another reason is Continental crust is the outer crust and oceanic is inner crust. As we go deeper, so the density will be increases. So continental crust is the outer one. So oceanic crust is the inner one. So as we go in the inner side, in the interior, density will be increases. Now the second layer of the earth is mantle. Mantle is the second layer of the earth. This is the thickest layer of the earth. And the average depth of this layer is about 2,900 kilometers. Mantle layer lies between the crust and the core of the earth. And the boundary between the crust and the mantle is Moho or Mohorovich. There is one more pronunciation of this word, Mohorovich, or we can say Mohorovich, discontinuity. Now, let's learn what is discontinuity. See, if we will see, the density of crust and the density of mantle will be different. If we will see the chemical composition of crust, it is made up of silica, aluminium, magnesium, and the chemical composition of mantle is different. So it means when the one layer stops and the another layer starts. So the boundary between the two layers which are totally different from each other. So we use the term discontinuity to separate two different layers. So which layer separates crust and mantle? Mohorovich discontinuity. Do you know, student, who discovered this Mohorovich discontinuity? Yes, a famous scientist called Andreza Mohorovich. Andreza Mohorovich is the name of the scientist who discovered this discontinuity. This layer is made up of dense and heavy materials such as oxygen, iron and magnesium. And the density of this layer between 3.5 gram per cubic centimeter and 5.5 gram per cubic centimeter. As we know, mantle is the thickest layer. It means the as we go in the interior, so density will be increases. Next, as we know, if we move toward the interior, as the depth increases, temperature also increases. So temperature of this layer is high. What is the temperature in this layer? 900 degrees Celsius till 2200 degrees Celsius. And if you will see the condition of rocks in this layer, the rocks will be in the molten state, means not solid. Why the rocks are available or why rocks are in the molten state? Because the temperature is high, due to which the rocks will be in molten state, not solid and not very liquid. And do you know, this layer is also called, this molten state is also called magma. And do you know, when volcanoes erupt, magma oozes out or coming out from the interior of the earth. So from where magma comes out? Yes, from the mantle as well as from the outer core. Because in the mantle and the outer core, the rocks are in the molten state, which is also called magma. Now see this diagram. Here I have depicted all different layers of the earth. This is called crust, outermost layer, thin layer, mantle, second layer, thickest layer of the earth. Mantle is divided in two parts, upper mantle and lower mantle. And next, innermost is core. Core is divided into two parts, that is outer core, inner core. Now see, what is lithosphere? Please learn the correct definition of lithosphere. Lithosphere doesn't mean that crust is also called lithosphere. No, the proper or complete definition of lithosphere is crust and upper mantle together forms lithosphere. Now see, Mohorovic discontinuity. I have told you in the previous slide, the boundary between the crust and the mantle is called Mohorovic. The chemical composition and the density of crust is different from mantle. So when the one layer stops and another layer starts, so which boundary separates or which discontinuity separates crust and mantle? Mohorovic. And the next is Gutenberg discontinuity. Gutenberg discontinuity, this boundary separates mantle and core. If we'll see, the chemical composition of mantle and core is totally different. And who discovered Gutenberg discontinuity? Yes, Benno Gutenberg. A famous scientist discovered this boundary between mantle and core. And the last one is Lehman boundary. Lehman boundary separates outer core and inner core. These are also different. The chemical composition, or we can say the density of outer core and inner core, is also different. So which boundary separates outer and inner core? Lehman boundary. And a famous scientist named Inge Lehman separates outer core and inner core. Now the definition or a simple meaning of discontinuity. A change or stop, that means something does not continue in the same way, or in the simple language, a boundary that separates one layer from the other. Now the last layer, innermost layer of the earth is core, which is also called barosphere. This layer lies below the mantle, innermost layer of the earth, and the boundary between the mantle and core is called Gutenberg discontinuity. The average diameter of the core is about 6,950 kilometers, and the chemical composition of core is that nickel and iron. Core is made up of heavy metal, that is nickel and iron. So which chemical symbol you use for nickel? Ni, for iron Fe. So Ni and Fe together called knife. So core is also called knife. And last, the density of the core is very high. As the core is the innermost layer, as we go deeper, the density will be increases. So the density of this layer between 5.0 gram per cubic centimeter and 13.0 gram per cubic centimeter. There are two types of core, outer core and inner core. Outer core, so the temperature of outer core is 2200 degrees Celsius and the temperature of inner core is 5000 degrees Celsius. Now very important point. So as we know that depth increases, temperature increases, and as we go deeper, temperature will be more and rocks will be in the molten state. You will not find rocks in the solid state because high temperature makes the rocks in the molten state. So as we know, outer core is in the molten state, means the rocks found in this outer core is in the molten state, whereas in inner core the rocks are in the solid state. Why so? As we know, inner core is the deepest layer or deepest part of or the innermost layer of the earth, that is inner core, as the temperature is very high. But why the rocks are in the solid state? Because of high pressure, because crust, outer mantle, inner mantle, outer core, that gives a tremendous, means huge pressure on the inner core, due to which the rocks are in the solid state. Now the last definition is asthenosphere. So is the soft layer of the earth under lithosphere? We can say the lower mantle. The mantle is made up of, or it divided in two parts, that is upper mantle, lower mantle. So lower mantle is also called asthenosphere, that is very